Hello everyone and welcome to an amazing game from round 6 of this year's UzChess Cup. It's the last game we'll show from the round and it features two Nodirbeks. Nodirbek Yakubboev and Nodirbek Abdusattorov. Abdusattorov leading the tournament so far. He is without a loss, and Yakubboev lost 2 games for the moment. He lost to Arjun and he lost to Parham. But you've seen him play, you know what he can do. When you see a Nodirbek and you see him play, it's very hard to say which Nodirbek is playing, due to the strength of the moves. But yeah, obviously Abdusattorov is the favorite going into this round. In live ratings, he was, I think, world number 5, I think. And yeah, definitely a challenge for anyone. And we've seen what Abdusattorov can do with the black pieces. So let's check it out. It's a grueling game, 136 moves, but you guys will enjoy it. So let's see what happened. Nodirbek Yakubboev with white opens with d4. We have d5, pawn to c4, pawn to e6, and knight to f3, knight to f6, and knight to c3. So some sort of English that occurred from the Queen's Gambit declined with d captures on c4. e4 and bishop to b4. Now just pretty standard Queen's Gambit decline, the Vienna variation. Bishop captures on c4. We have knight captures on e4 and the castle's king side. So you could capture on c3, but you have to go back with the bishop capturing on c3. This just gives white a bit too much space to work with. But we don't have knight captures on c3, which is the top played move in the position. Instead, Nodirbek goes knight to f6, or rather Abdusattorov goes knight to f6. We have queen to a4 with check, sort of winning the bishop, but not really, as knight to c6 blocks check and defends the bishop. We have knight to e5, now preparing to win some material here. Rook to b8 and knight captures on c6. We have b captures and rook to d1. Okay, again, nothing new here. This is all been seen before. We have castle's king side. Queen captures on a7 and bishop to d7. Again, this is all known theory. Nothing new being played here. We have queen back to a4. Pawn to c5 attacking the queen. Queen to c2 and bishop to c6. Again, all been played before. And you can see the players are just blitzing out moves there. I mean, Abdusattorov has more time on the clock than he started with, as this is a very well known line. a3, bishop captures, and now there is a game where queen captures was played, but here we have b captures on c3, and it is now, as of move 16, that we have a completely new game. So Yakubboev spent a bit more time, but still, I mean, nothing spectacular. We have queen to d6. First mover Nodirbek Abdusattorov spends time. He spent some 17 minutes for this move. And we have bishop back to e2. And queen d6 is perhaps a tricky move, because you could go wrong. For example, if let's say you play bishop d5 and then go queen c6, or even imagine a bishop to e8 followed by queen c6. You will have pressure against that g2 pawn. So let's say bishop to e2 was not played as it was. Let's say you play pawn to f3. Let's say, okay, you don't want doing anything along this diagonal. Well, then bishop to d5 can be very strong. You either fix your pawn structure, or if bishop goes back now, then you have bishop b3 and you win the game, or rather you win the exchange and then the game. So you have to be a little bit careful here. That's why bishop to e2 was played, and now you can't really go bishop to d5. The same idea no longer works, as there's now pawn to c4. That's why you move the bishop c6, bishop e3, you connect the rooks, you develop everything, so it's perfectly fine. So you have to work it out. Bishop to e4 was played also fairly quickly. We have queen to d2, and now rook f to d8. Abdusattorov gets his other rook into the game, and pawn to a4. Like in the previous game, the passed pawn will play a major role in the outcome of this game. Hence, again, the quote above the board. But yeah, a4 is the only passed pawn on the board. We have queen to c6, putting pressure on g2, and now pawn to f3, where you don't have to worry about losing an exchange now. We have bishop to g6, bishop to b5, and queen to a8. We have bishop to a3, now trying to win a clean pawn on c5, and the way to play this is to play pawn to c6. Idea being that after the bishop moves, let's say bishop f1, you will capture on a4. You eliminate the passed pawn, and you just have a nice game. Bishop captures on c5. Yes, it can be played, but okay. I mean, There's no pass pawn. But Nodirbek said that instead of, just playing for safety, I want a pass pawn as well. And he played c captures on d4. C captures on d4. He played pawn to e5. Okay, there's a queen on on d2, so you cannot capture. Queen to c1, and now he captures on d4. So now, okay, he allows the passed a pawn to survive, but he has two passed pawns now. And here we have bishop to e7. And the problem now for Abdusattorov is that it's very, very hard to parry all the threats from bishop to e7. To give you an example, if you go rook d5, then you can just capture and bishop c6. So that's just winning for white. You can't do that. You can't really, you could go rook d to c8, but then just bishop to c6 again, and once the queen moves, you will also play something like bishop to c5, or even better, you can even go queen to c5, because if black ever trades, you will have two bishops covering a7 and a8, and now it's merely a matter of advancing the passed a pawn to victory, because you have all of these squares covered. So that's why after bishop e7, Abdusattorov plays queen to a7. He gives up the exchange, but he might have some threats here along this diagonal, and just bishop to c5. Not interested in the rook, even though it's fine to capture the rook. Bishop to c5 is also fine. As a human, you prefer to have the bishop pair than to give up one of the bishops just to win in exchange. We have queen to a5. Rook captures on d4, we have pawn to c6, and rook captures on d8. We have rook captures and bishop captures on c6. Rook to c8 now trying to win one of the bishops, but just bishop b5. And there's not much you can do here. Best for black would be to play just bishop to d3 here. You give up that bishop, then you capture on, it's the only way for white to play. You capture on c5, and that's it. White will still be pushing because white has that passed pawn, but it's your best hope of holding this game. Abdusattorov played pawn to h6, and now there's a big problem here. And it's not easy to spot, but if you can find it, you're on your way to becoming a grandmaster. So have at it. Find the only way for white how to play for a win, while I give you a couple of seconds. Queen to c4. The way to win this is to kick away the queen from the a5 square, and that's it. So now, whatever you play, queen b4 is coming. In the game, bishop to d3 was played, which is a move that we discussed that should have been played a few moves ago, even though it's also the best move here, but still just queen to b4. And there's not much you can do. Queen captures on b4, Abdusattorov traded, we have bishop captures, a captures, and now rook to b8. Seems like, okay, you're doing fine, and if white wants to defend the pawn, he has to go to the passive a5 square. But, sometimes, it just works, and it doesn't matter. So rook a5, we have knight to d7, trying to somehow grab hold of that pawn. King to f1, we have knight to b6, but now bishop to d6. And the problem is you don't have, if you go knight to c4, it seems like, okay, you can maybe trade down and maybe win the pawn, but still after bishop captures, knight captures, and king e2, there's no way for the knight to go after the pawn. For example, knight b3, your king is already on d3, and you're just going to win the game easily with the passed b pawn. The knight will have to be sacrificed for the pawn, and that's it. So after bishop to d6, rook to b7 was played, and now again you have to be, engine-like, precise. Have at it. Win the game for Yakubboev while I give you a couple of seconds. Only move bishop to g3. You have to avoid all of the trickery from the knight. Bishop to f4 also is insufficient, because after, let's say, king h7, black will have to get the king into the game. You will go bishop e3, attack the knight. All of a sudden, again, you get forked. So that's why you have to go all the way back after rook to b7, bishop to g3, and now the knight cannot do anything. King h7, bishop to f2, knight to c4. Seems like, okay, you're winning the pawn, but not really. Rook a4 attacks the knight. Knight to d2 check. We have king to e1, and now the problem is you cannot keep the knight. If you go knight b3 or knight to b1, the passed pawn just marches forward. Knight to c3, rook to a7, and that's it. Rook to b8, rook captures on f7. You're up 2 pawns. You still have a protected passed pawn on b6. This is just elementary endgame. So after king e1, Nodirbek said, the other one, Abdusattorov, I'm going all out. Knight captures on f3, and now after g captures, he picks up the b5 pawn. So now he's up a pawn, but down a bishop. But, you know, in a practical game, he does have chances of holding this. So let's see what happened. King f1, king to g6, and now just rook to g4, and he goes back, king to h7. He has his fortress, and he says, all right, if you want to advance, you're going to have to lose these 2 pawns, and then, you know, who knows what happens. So let's see what happens. h4, pawn to f6, rook to c4, and pawn to h5. We have rook to c7, king to g6, king to g2, rook to b2. So just, you know, just dancing around a little bit. King g3, rook b1, bishop c5, rook b8, king to f4, and rook to e8. We have rook d7, rook c8, attacking the bishop, bishop to d6, and king rook to e8, cutting off the king from the e file. Rook to b7, rook to d8, attacking the bishop, bishop to c5. We have rook c8, bishop to b4, and rook to e8. And this went on for a while. Not a lot happening here. For example, rook c8. Okay, just trying to, you know, get the other one to make a mistake for free. But of course, that will not work when players are of this caliber. And here is where it's starting to get interesting. The white king is already on d7, which means that Abdusattorov will be able to gobble up those pawns. So king h7, we have king to e7, rook captures on f3. King to f7, rook d3 attacks the bishop, and now rook to e3. And here the position is completely winning for Yakubboev, but of course he missed it with 3 minutes on the clock. But if you guys want, I can't stop you. You can always pause the video and try to figure it out for yourselves. But the winning idea here is rook to d8. Rook to b8 was played in the game. I'm going to show it because it's really a lot of fun. Point is that after you play something, doesn't really matter what, bishop to f8 is coming, and now after rook g8, defending the pawn, you will play rook d5. You're threatening rook captures on h5 checkmate. So now you have to defend the pawn, and now you go bishop g7. All of a sudden, the threat is rook to d8, followed by rook to h8. So rook b4, you have to prepare for checks, and now just bishop captures on f6. And now with the bishop covering the h6 square, you will have all the threats you need to actually win this game. Or if rook b7 check, king to e6, rook to b6 check, you will block, and now you cannot go rook b7 because you just trade rooks and win the game easily. Or if you go rook to b8, again, doesn't matter, rook d7 check. Now you cannot go here because bishop g5 is checkmate. You have to go up the board, and then rook d8 check, again, trades rooks, and of course you're going to be completely winning. You have an h4 pawn, you have a dark square bishop, it queens on a dark square, so of course it's winning. Easy of course. So here rook to b8 was played, which doesn't work quite as well. Rook to e4, we have bishop to f8, so similar but not quite. And now rook to a4. We have rook to b7, rook captures on h4, and now bishop captures on g7. So Yakubboev managed to, you know, create some imbalance in the position, but now even after he gobbles up all of these pawns, and he will do that, this is a known theoretical draw. And especially for a classical game with Nodirbek having, Abdusattorov having so much more time on the clock, should be an easy draw. But this is you know, why chess is so amazing. And even if you could hold a draw for 100 games, there's always that one game. And here, okay, you give a check. The problem is if after rook to h6, if you capture, then nothing really is happening. So here rook to g4. For those of you who are maybe new to chess, maybe you're thinking, okay, but there's a bishop. Yes, but you cannot checkmate with king and bishop. This would be a draw to insufficient material. You know, there are you know, new people watching, so maybe it's important to mention it sometime. But okay, rook to g4, and I'll look at this. This is move 87. So let's go a few moves back. So rook captures on h4 happened on move 86. So it means that if Abdusattorov can survive until move 136 and not get checkmated, then it's a draw by 50 move rule. So let's see if he can do it. Rook h6, okay, and now a lot of dancing around. This game is impossible to win, so your only hope is for your opponent to make a mistake. And Abdusattorov, I mean, with 27-67, not likely to make a mistake. King to h7. Look at this, bishop f6. Okay, just you just always have to have a check. If you always have a check ready, then your opponent cannot checkmate you. That's basically the idea. King f6, rook a6, king f5, rook a1, rook h4. Now you cannot go to g7. If you go to g7, of course, bishop e5 check picks up the rook. But, okay, he's not going to fall for that. King to g8, bishop e5, rook a6, bishop f6, rook a2, rook h8, check, king f7, rook h7, check, king to g8, and rook g7, check, king f8. We're already on move 110. So 26 more moves, or rather 27 more moves, and Nodirbek Abdusattorov has saved the game. Rook c7, king to g8, rook to g7, check. We have king f8, rook b7, king g8, bishop d4, rook a6, bishop b6, rook a4, just, you know, trying to get him to make some sort of a mistake until he runs out of those 50 moves, because then it's a draw. Rook d7, rook a6, bishop d6, rook a1, bishop e7, rook to a6, and bishop to f6. We have rook a2, king to e6, rook a6 check, king e7, king h7, king f7, rook to a2, bishop d4, and now this is move 129. Nodirbek needs to survive 8 more moves, and he's clear. And any move he plays is a draw, pretty much. Unless you play a silly move like rook b2 and then, you know, you blunder your rook, or you play rook to a7 and then you blunder the rook this way. No, Nodirbek Abdusattorov found the only move that is not so, you know, clearly bad that loses the game. It's absolutely amazing. He played rook to c2, and there's a very, very cool reason why rook to c2 is the only move that loses the game for him. But you guys will have a chance to figure it out. So have at it. For the final time, feel free to pause the video and win the game for Nodirbek Yakubboev while I give you a couple of seconds. The only move that wins the game is king f6. And now you will see the huge problem behind rook to c2. King to g8 was played, rook to d8 with check, king to h7, and now king to f5. And he was in this position on move 132 that Nodirbek Abdusattorov resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. The problem is you don't have rook to c2 check, and you don't have rook to f2 check. So c2 was the worst possible square Nodirbek could have put his rook on. He was so close. Any other square and he would have been within the 50 move rule, and he would have gotten a draw, and he would still be undefeated in the tournament. But no, he loses this game, and Nodirbek Yakubboev becomes the first to take down Nodirbek Abdusattorov. And there has been some talk about, but can't black play rook f2? And look at this, rook f2, okay, you give up the rook, no harm in that. Bishop captures, king to g7, and now after rook to d7 check, you still will get checkmated. That's not the question. So you get checkmated on move 137, and move 137 is one move beyond the 50 move rule. So it seems like you could also draw the game by sacrificing the rook that way, but no, it's not just 50 moves. It's 50 moves without a pawn being moved or without a capture occurring. So with this, a capture has occurred, even though no pawn has moved. By giving up a rook, a capture occurs, and the counter starts all over. So you would have to survive for 50 more moves from this position. So that's, but it's a nice catch. Yeah, you know, I'm sure some of you were wondering about that. So yeah, there you have it. 132 moves. He was close, but yeah, Yakubboev takes him down, or Yakubboev. And these are the standings after 6 rounds have been played. Sorry. Wrong standings. No idea why I have these standings. That's from Title Tuesday, but yeah, here are the standings. There we go. Okay, so with 4 points, we have now a 3-way tie. Arjun Erigaisi, Parham Maksulu, and Nodirbek Abdusattorov with 4 points. It's gonna be a really tough tournament. Like I said, it's basically India versus Uzbekistan this tournament, with the addition of Parham, of Nepomniachtchi, and the Rapport. So chances are an Indian or an Uzbek will take first place. We have Javokir Sindarov with 3.5. Now Nodirbek Yakubboev, after defeating Abdusattorov, also on 3 points, sharing it with Pragnananda. Nepo and Rapport with 2.5. Aravind Chitambaram with 2, and Shamsin Invokidov with 1.5 points. So yeah, like I said, in a game of two Nodirbeks, a Nodirbek will always win most of the time. It's a super tournament, and also, like I always say, in a super tournament, a super grandmaster will always have last place. So yeah, that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry for a bit of a longer video, but I mean, it's a really cool game, so hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Torkel Stenquist, Felix Steinels, Shadri Subramanian, Andrei Shrade, James Anderson for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.